Can you call yourself a Christian if you don't believe that Christ rose from the dead? Plus, we talk about screen time for children under the age of 5, and I know you've been waiting for it, but finally, on this podcast, I deconstruct a Taylor Swift song. You're listening to Deconstructing the Culture. I am your host, Elisa Steele. Before we go ahead and jump in the news, I want to talk about Netflix because they made the most, in my mind, hilarious tweets the other week. And they weren't trying to be funny, but that's kind of like what made it so funny. Well, they decided that the term chick flick is offensive to women. Of course, everything's offensive to women. So they wrote here, quick PSA, can we stop calling films chick flicks unless the films are literally about small baby chickens? Here's why the phrase should be absolutely retired. And then it continues, of course, in little blocks because it's Twitter. For starters, chick flicks are traditionally synonymous with romantic comedies. This suggests that women are the only people interested in 1, romance, and 2, comedy, which I can promise from the men I've come across in my life simply isn't true. They aren't sweeping categories specific to men. You don't hear people asking to watch man movies. Instead, pretty much every intersection of genre is on the table and seen for men, except, of course, the aforementioned rom-coms. The term also cheapens, this is according to Netflix, the term also cheapens the work that goes into making these films. Romantic comedies and or films centered around female leads go through just as much editing, consideration, and rewriting as any other film. By nicknaming films chick flicks, it drives home that there's something trivial about watching them. But what's trivial about watching a film that makes you feel 1,000 emotions in 90 minutes? Overall, there's nothing inherently gendered about liking a lighthearted film with a strong female lead and emotional arc. So next time you call something a chick flick, you'd better be referring to Chicken Run. Now, this makes me kind of just chuckle a lot because, quite frankly, my husband's top 5 movies, well, I don't remember them off the top of my head. I know that 2 of them are The Notebook, which you know how I feel about The Notebook. I hate that movie. And Titanic, which I don't mind Titanic, and it was pretty well done. Also, Leonardo DiCaprio was pretty cute in that movie, and I really liked it when I was a teenager. I had a huge crush on him in that movie. But that aside, why are they saying that calling something a chick flick means it's calling it trivial? Are you saying chicks are trivial? Like, your entire messaging almost kills the message that you're trying to pull forward, which is you think by calling something a girl movie or a chick movie is making it trivial, which means you're calling women trivial, which is the message you're trying to oppose. It's funny. It's really funny. And it's just, there's nothing wrong with titling a movie or referring to a movie as to what its wide frame audience likes to watch. And what I also think is funny too is that it would be offensive to men to call something the opposite, to call something a man movie. But for some reason, it doesn't ever offend men, and we would never say, and we would never title calling a movie a man movie offensive to men. For some reason, calling something a man movie is also offensive to women. So you call something a man movie or you call something a chick flick, doesn't matter. It's all offensive to women, which at the end of the day comes down to the media thinks everything is offensive, but especially to women, because don't you know, we have intersectional points for being a woman. It's just funny to me, and I just thought it was really, really dumb. So I thought I'd share it with you. But moving on, talking about screen time and talking about movies and Netflix, let's talk about screen time for children under the age of 5. So this is taken from an article from the New York Times, and the World Health Organization came out with a recommendation saying that children under the ages 5 should have a limited or no screen time. That's pretty harsh. So essentially, just to back it up, in 2016, a couple of years ago, a less harsh standard, but still pretty warning, came out from the American Academy of Pediatrics. They issued guidelines that recommended no screen time other than video chatting, so like FaceTiming someone, for children under 18 months. This is a recommendation introduced basically if you are going to have any children watching things after should be high quality programming to children between the ages of 18 to 24 months of age. It advised that parents and caregivers watch the program with them, which, let's pause right there. I don't know what they're calling high programming, but I'm pretty sure Baby Einstein would maybe fall in with that. If you're around kids, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm sorry, but I don't want to watch Baby Einstein with a child. Also, that it defeats the purpose. Most of the time when parents or caregivers are having their kids watch something, it's so that the parents can do something else. If they're gonna watch Baby Einstein with their child, they might as well not have Baby Einstein on. This is not a plug for Baby Einstein, by the way. It's just what I remember my younger siblings watching when they were young, okay? So, continuing on, essentially what they also put for the end of it is children between the ages of 2 to 5 years should only watch 1 hour a day of approved programming. Now, the newest one that just came out from the World Health Organization is even more harsh than that one. Dr. David Hill, a pediatrician who led the group to write the AAP's 2016 guidelines, said that there are no known benefits, get this, no known benefits of screen media for children under 18 months of age. But he added that technology is developing faster than the scientific study of the effect that new devices are having on young brains. Dr. Hill said that WHO appears to be applying the precautionary principle and saying, if we don't know that it's going to do kids any good, then there is some reason to believe that it's bad, then why do it at all? So the World Health Organization's guidelines go way further than the AAP's recommendations. According to the World Health Organization, the number of obese people worldwide, not just in America, has tripled since 1974. And we know this, just looking around, we know this. I mean, I call it starvation through low quality food. People are getting bigger and bigger, but they are starving their bodies for nutrients because they're giving it more food, but it's poisonous food. So instances of childhood obesity, once considered a source or scourge of wealthy nations, are increasingly dramatically low in low and middle income countries, especially those in Africa and Asia. So it's no longer obesity is plaguing just rich countries, which used to be what it was identified with, but now it's in low and middle class families, which is Africa, or countries such as Africa and Asia. The organization said that the failure to meet current physical activity recommendations is responsible for more than 5 million deaths globally each year across all age groups. Quote, what we really need to do is bring back play for children, Dr. Jana Williamsman, who works with childhood obesity in the WHO, and in a statement, quote, this is about making the shift from sedentary time to playtime while protecting sleep. And all this to say, don't we already know this? Do we need scientific data to tell us that our kids look glazed over and brain dead when they're watching TV, no matter if it's educational programs or just, Paw Patrol? We know this. I don't think we need any scientific studies to tell us that screen time for children isn't healthy. It's just not. Not only can you just see the effects of while they're watching it, but we also see the effects of after children get off watching media, whether that's looking at a phone or watching TV or playing on a video, computer game or whatever. They're irritable and cranky and just, it's not healthy for them. I don't think we need a scientific study to tell us this. While I'm glad that it's starting to crop up so that we can have these headlines of like, hey, maybe this scientific inundation and media screen time inundation isn't good for us. I think we knew this beforehand. And I think that honestly, as a whole society and culture, we need to start pulling back away from technology and media for our children at least. I don't think it's healthy to have more tech in schools. I've talked about this in other podcasts. Basically, the tech companies come in and they give these huge over-the-top gifts to schools, and they look, oh, they're being so nice. They're giving all these Apple computers or, doesn't matter what brand. They're giving all these computers to the school. Aren't they so nice and generous? No, not only they're gathering the kids' data, but it also starts the addiction and use on their technology starting at a young age, which makes them long-time consumers. And it's not benefiting the school or the children. Studies have shown over and over that it's not healthy for children, that they don't retain more information or become smarter because they're learning from a computer instead of a textbook. So all this to say, I think we already knew this in our gut. And also, just pause right here. I feel like I'm going to get a bunch of angry moms messaging me. So I'm going to talk to you, angry mom, if you're about to send me an email about how I'm being so judgmental about people and giving their kids technology. I get it. Like, every once in a while, me and my husband will be in an airport and we'll see a kid completely glued to a tablet. And my husband will be like, yeah, we're never doing that. And I'll be like, hey, don't talk too fast. I'm one of 5 kids, and I've also been a nanny to a lot of kids. I know that sometimes parents just get desperate, and it's been a hellacious day and they just need 2 seconds to do whatever they're doing or get through the line or finish dinner at a restaurant. Like, I'm not trying to call you out and put you on the spot and say, oh my gosh, you're a terrible parent. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, hey, maybe we should pause for a minute and examine our gut instincts on technology, look at the data, look at the science that's coming out, compare the two together, which I think are pretty harmonious, and take a big giant step back. It's okay for our kids to be bored, really. It's okay for our kids to have a little emotional meltdown, because that's probably healthier than having them plug into a movie and completely emotionally numb out and shut down. And maybe that's easier on parents and caregivers to have the child be sedated essentially with movies, but long term it makes for healthier kids because they have to go through that emotional meltdown and learn to deal with their feelings and learn to process their feelings instead of being plugged in. That's all I'm saying. I'm not judging you. I'm not saying you're a bad parent. I'm just saying it's worth a second thought about what this is doing to our children long term, not only their physical growth, but their emotional growth and spiritual growth as well. That's all I'm saying. All right, so moving on to our next topic. I want to address the question that I mentioned in the beginning, and that is, can you really call yourself a Christian if you don't believe that Christ rose from the dead? So I didn't really know that this was a thing until recently, but this lady named Serena Jones, she's the president of the Union of Theological Seminary. She calls herself a Christian, but she came out and says that belief in the physical resurrection of Jesus Christ is not necessary to be a Christian. And I'm thinking, isn't that the whole point of Christianity, is that Christ conquered death? He didn't just die and then he stayed dead, because lots of people die and stay dead, like actually everyone, but he conquered death. He came alive again. He rose from the dead. That's what Easter's celebrating, is the miracle of everything, of him dying for us and then coming alive again. He conquered death. That's like what half the praise songs are about. So I didn't know that there were supposed Christians or people who claim to be Christians who also don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead, or that that's not necessary. So Jones actually said, quote, "For Christians for whom the physical resurrection becomes a sort of obsession, that seems to be a pretty wobbly faith. What if tomorrow someone found the body of Jesus still in the tomb? Would that mean that Christianity was a lie? No, faith is stronger than that," unquote. The glaring issue here is that Christianity would be a lie if Jesus hadn't been physically resurrected from the dead. 1 Corinthians says, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul writes, "If Christ had not been raised, then our preaching is in vain and your faith is in vain. We are even found to be misrepresenting God, because we testified about God that he raised Christ, whom he did not raise, if it is true that the dead are not raised." So it literally even says in the Bible, if Christ didn't die and come back to life, then Christianity would be alive and your faith would be in vain. So this lady, for her status and her feelings on this issue, is very incorrect, and she doesn't seem to have studied her Bible. Continuing, Eric Erickson recently wrote an article earlier this week on this exact topic of Serena's comments, and he wrote here, quote, "The 21st century is overrun with people who think that unless they experience something themselves or have firsthand knowledge of a fact, that there is no truth. This is deeply destructive. One need not go to space to know that the earth is a sphere. If you think the physical resurrection of Jesus being a necessary part of Christian faith is just one person's opinion, then it's time to stop thinking that flat earthers are wrong. He continues, with that same logic as those who reject the physical resurrection of Jesus but call themselves Christians, men who love women can call themselves lesbians, and those who love to eat meat can call themselves vegetarians. After all, facts no longer matter, and everything is an opinion, unquote. That's from Eric Erickson. Phenomenal point, and he is spot on. If you gut Christianity and take out the point of Christianity and then say, oh, but you can still be a Christian even if you don't believe, the core part of Christianity. No, you're not a Christian anymore if you don't actually believe in Christianity. That just makes sense. It's like he said, calling yourself a vegetarian while you eat meat every day. It's not, if truth isn't a matter of your opinion, truth is truth. It's fact. And that's why I believe that as Christians, we can't base our life on opinions or feelings or culture's constant shiftings and fads. It has to be based on the Bible. If Christianity can be whatever your feelings are, then you're not really living Christianity. You're living out your feelings, basically the religion of your feelings. Your feelings don't always agree with what the Bible says, but the Bible is truth no matter what, regardless of your feelings. So then that continues with along that line of thought. That kind of leads you from, if you take the basics of Christianity, of Christ dying and then coming back to life, you have to ask yourself, can Christians be Christian without believing in all of Christ's teachings, essentially? Like, can you just pick and choose, cherry pick which of Christ's teachings that you want to believe in? So basically, I'll just take the top two that come to mind when I think about our cultural dysfunction today. And can you call yourself a Christian if you're pro-abortion? I have very blatantly stated on Instagram, and you guys have seen the Instagram fights that have broken out because of it, but I've said you can't call yourself a Christian. You can call yourself a Christian, but it doesn't make you a Christian if you're also pro-abortion. And so, for instance, I mean, it's in the Bible, but here's just a couple of verses. Psalms 139, 13 through 6. For you created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. This is clearly a God who believes in the value in having a soul before you're born. And he knit us together in our mother's womb. That makes us human. That makes us valuable. That makes us, a creation of God. And you're not human until you breathed air and you've been born. So the Bible, it clearly expresses that you should be pro-life. And so continuing, the next one would be, can you call yourself a Christian if you are pro-gay marriage? I would say no. In Leviticus 18:22, it clearly says, men shall not lie with a male as one lies with a female. It is an abomination. Leviticus 20:13 says, if there is a man who lies with a male as those who lie with a woman, both of them have committed a detestable act. This is clearly saying, and God's word is clearly telling us that homosexuality is an abomination. So no, you can't just pick and choose your favorite sins and be like, well, I'm going to call myself a Christian, but I'm not going to believe in all of Christ's teachings, just some of them, Perry chick. I'm going to keep my favorite sins because they're my favorite. But, the sins that I don't like, I don't know, thou shalt not murder. Yeah, I'll keep that one because I don't like murder. But I kind of like homosexuality, so I'm going to hold on to that pet sin. Or pet sin. That's not the way that works. That's not Christianity anymore. It's the religion of your own feelings. So essentially, I believe at the end of the day, what it comes down to is if you're going to call yourself a Christian, then your lives have to be, my life has to be based on biblical truth, not on cultural trends. And it's essentially the same as the parable of the wise man who built the wise man built his house upon a rock, and the foolish man built it on sand. Essentially, in this case, I would say that God's word is the rock and everything else is sand, and you won't have a firm foundation at all, and your life will change every time the wind blows and the sand gets dusted somewhere else. So before I continue on with the rest of the podcast, I'm just going to ask you right now to please, if you're listening to on iTunes or on YouTube, go ahead and leave a review. Leave a 5-star review if you're feeling lazy, but I still will love you for leaving that 5 stars. If you're feeling extra motivated, go in and write some nice words and I will read them and maybe I'll give you a shout out here on the podcast, but that would just mean the world to me. And honestly, in a world that doesn't promote conservatism and conservative voices, it's me and you guys. It's me and you guys are the people I depend on to help spread the word about the truth, honestly. And so thank you so much for those of you who have been sharing it so consistently. I see you guys tag me all the time on Instagram. You guys share this podcast and I love it. You guys are amazing. You guys literally mean the world to me. You rock my socks off. So thank you so much for doing that. And please go, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and on iTunes or wherever you're listening and leave a review. Thank you guys so much. So we're going to go into books. Guys, this book, holy cow, probably shouldn't have clapped. That might have killed your ears. But for books, this book is called The History of the Future, Oculus, Facebook, and the Revolution That Swept Virtual Reality. Guys, this book came out on February 19th, 2019, so not that long ago. It's a little bit longer. It's like 520 odd pages, but it was so good. So my dad is an engineer, so I've always been really interested, just talking to him, getting to know technology in the wave of the future. And I remember my dad, once we were talking and he was just like, Elisa, someday you're just going to be able to hold up a little device and point it at someone's face and their face is going to be scanned and it's going to pull up someone's profile and you're going to be able to read all kinds of things, personal information about them. And this was 10 years ago. And I was like, whoa, that's so crazy. And this is before Facebook could identify your face by just looking, by scanning the picture. So to me, this seems so crazy. But my dad's like, oh no, these things are already being worked on. It's only a matter of time before they come to the general public. And then I remember Facebook started doing that recognition thing and I was so creeped out. And I was like, oh my gosh, my dad was right. But this book was so fascinating. It was behind the scenes of how virtual reality came to the mass public, how for forever, apparently, I didn't know anything about virtual reality or the history of it, but apparently started out with a really rocky start. A lot of people had false starts like, oh, we've made it. And then it really kind of flopped pretty bad. And so this was such a good book. I absolutely loved it. It was really interesting. The guy who essentially created the virtual reality that took off and was amazing and really launched virtual reality to the general public. His name was Lucky, and it's just fascinating story from the beginning. He was a homeschooled kid, and then he was 19 and living in a trailer in his parents' driveway, and he's creating this and working on it because it's his passion. He's working on it 24/7, and then he goes on this wild ride where he kind of gets discovered, and then Facebook buys them. And then honestly, the last 3 hours of the book were probably my favorite, maybe 2 hours of the book. I don't know if you've picked up on this, but I count books by how many hours in I am instead of how many pages in I am. So if I had to put that in pages, I'd say maybe the last 200 pages roughly. I don't know. Were really, 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 really interesting. And it's essentially how this guy named Lucky kid, he was in his early 20s, he got kicked out of his own company and off of his passion of creating virtual reality because he came out and it accidentally leaked that he supported Donald Trump and voted for him in the election, and that destroyed him. You can read about the whole story. It is crazy. I knew Hollywood was super biased, and I knew that Hollywood had a blacklist, and I knew that just feels like a general knowledge at this point, but I had no idea that Silicon Valley and the technology world is basically just like Hollywood, and you will be shunned and resented and kicked out and pushed into a tiny little corner until your career dies if you come out that you support someone other than a liberal and someone other than Hillary Clinton during that election. So it was really mind-blowing, really crazy to hear about the bias in Silicon Valley. I had no idea that was there. So really, really mind-blowing. Great book. If you're interested in technology and the history of virtual reality, I definitely recommend checking it out. All right, now let's talk about a movie/TV show. So I finally watched the Fire documentary on Netflix, The Greatest Party That Never Happened. And basically, if you don't already know the background story, it's about how this crew and this guy particularly named Billy Farland or something, he I'm pretty sure I'm slaughtering his last name. It's Billy McFarland. There we go. And he was just like, I'm going to throw this massive party. I'm going to throw this huge, massive party on an island. But then everybody got there, and it was supposed to be like luxury accommodations, luxury food, luxury villas. And it turns out it was literally a bunch of hurricane disaster tents that were falling apart, soaked mattresses, and styrofoam containers with some toast and some cheese on it. And the way he got it launched was literally by just paying big o bucks to get models, like really, really high-end models, to go out and take these pictures. And it was like 400 like Instagram influencers, I guess it would be called, who posted about this huge party, and it sold out in like a few hours. And then everyone gets there and they're like, got crazy screwed over. And the people who worked on it, insanity. I would play you the trailer, but it has some language in it, and I know that a lot of you listeners listen to this around your kids, so I will not probably omit that. But if you're interested, go check it out on Netflix. Really interesting. Now we're going to move on to the song. This week's song, I was going to do a different one, and then Taylor Swift came out with her song Me, with Brendan Urie from Panic at the Disco, and I was like, nah, I got to do this song, especially because I watched the music video, and I was like, yep, need to deconstruct this song. Plus, I've never deconstructed a Taylor Swift song. How is that not a thing? She has a lot of songs I would not condone. Maybe we'll have to do some old school Taylor Swift. I don't know. But she came out with this brand new song, and I'm going to go ahead and play you a short little clip of the video, and then we will deconstruct it. So first off, what's with always the fights in the rain? Taylor Swift and fights in the rain. That seems to be a thing. But let's dive into these lyrics. Y'all are, yeah, if you haven't seen it already and had your own deconstructing thoughts. Also, I just want to pause right there. Why do you think I deconstruct songs on here? Is it because A, it's entertaining, and then B, maybe you will recognize the songs as being destructive and not good for your teenagers or you? Yes, both of those reasons are legitimate. But the third and most important reason is I want you to start thinking like this too. I know that might sound like, wait, really, Elisa? But I'm serious. I want you to listen to your music and think, what is this telling my subconscious? What is this playing over in my mind that maybe will affect my life or my teenager's life or my friend's life? I want you to think about this when you see songs too. And if you see a really good song that, I mean, not a really good song, if you see a song that would be perfect to deconstruct in the podcast, feel free to send that to me on Instagram or my email, conservativebabes@gmail.com. All right, so these lyrics. I promise that you'll never find another like me. I know that I'm a handful, baby. I know I never think before I jump. That's dumb. And you're the kind of guy the ladies want. And there's a lot of cool chicks out there. I know I went psycho on the phone. I never leave well enough alone. Well, okay, so she's admitting that she's handful, difficult, and she went psycho. Those are never things that you should be proud of. And that seems like she's kind of just like, I know I'm crazy and everyone wants you, but you should want me because I'm psycho. That's kind of what it sounds like. Continuing, I never leave well enough alone, and trouble's gonna follow where I go. Yeah, that's bad. Why are you inviting trouble to follow you? And why, if trouble is following you, would you want that for someone you love? That seems kind of self-destructive to you and others. And there's a lot of cool chicks out there. But one of these things is not like the others, like a rainbow with all of the colors. Baby doll, when it comes to a lover, I promise you'll never find another like me. What? Oh, so now you're saying we should only care about our lovers? Like, what about, sure, maybe when it comes to a lover, they'll never find another just like you, but being a lover isn't something that we should look at as our number one priority. How about what kind of wife are you going to make? What kind of spiritual influence are you going to be? What kind of mother are you going to be? That's really important. What kind of homemaker are you going to be? Are you going to be a lifelong spouse? Why are we so concerned about what kind of lover you are? I'm sorry, but that's the least of my worries. And it kind of plays into the cultural influence and punchline that we like to put out there, or a leftist like to put out there, more secular society likes to say, well, you need to sleep with them before you marry them, because what if they're terrible at sex? You don't want to be stuck with that. You need to find out if they're a good lover. No, that is not what a good marriage and lifetime commitment is based on, is how good they are at making love. It's about common values, shared faith, and whether or not your lifestyles line up? Is she going to be a mom who works out of the house or stay-at-home mom? I'm not saying either is better than the others. I am just saying those are things that you need to talk about, not about how good of a lover they are. And that's definitely not what you should base staying with someone with or not, especially when they're saying that trouble follows them and they're a psycho on the phone. Yeah, lover status. I don't think that's what you should be worried about right now. Continuing. I'm the only one of me. That's obvious. Baby, that's the fun of me. That's all that's the fun of you, is that there's only one of you? Duh, there's only one of everyone. You're the only one of you, and baby, that's the fun of you. That's not giving him much credit. And I promise that nobody's gonna love you like me. Yeah, someone else might love them better, actually, might not be psycho and might not have trouble following them. I know I tend to make it about me, so she's admitting she's really selfish. I know you never get hurt. Oh, I know you never get just what you see. That's bad. But I will never bore you, baby. Hold the phone. What? She's saying, essentially, what you see is not what you get. I'm deceptive. I'm psycho. Trouble follows me. But guess what? I'll never bore you. Well, a serial killer's never going to bore you either. Is that a good reason to stay with them? I don't think so. There's a lot of things that make life not boring, but doesn't mean it's good. And also, what is this telling people? That a good reason to stay in a relationship is because you're not bored? How about when you are bored? How about when you've been married for 40 years and maybe it's not as spicy as it once was and they're kind of boring you? Is that a reason to leave the relationship? Because if it's a reason to stay, that they're never going to bore you, is that reverse the true as well, that if they're really boring and they are boring you, then that's a reason to leave? Do you see what I'm saying here? She continues, and there's a lot of lame guys out there, and when we had that fight out in the rain, you ran after me and called my name. I never want to see you walk away, and there's a lot of lame guys out there. Pause right here. If you didn't catch it, if you weren't watching this on YouTube where I showed the video itself, you're going to have seen this scene that I played where it's literally the guy, he flips out something. I don't remember. It was too fast for me to see. And she says, like, essentially, like, her body language is like, no, I don't want it. And then he flips out a ring, like an engagement ring. And she's like, no, like, I don't want that from you either. And then he flips out a little kitten. And she's like, yes, 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 give it to me now. Meaning, what kind of images or what kind of messaging is this sending to anyone? It doesn't matter your age, that you shouldn't take that lifelong commitment and that seals you together and makes you one and brings a stability and basis for building a family together with lasting impact and mutual values. You're throwing a nah and a upturned nose to the diamond ring and commitment, but you're accepting a cat. That's also indicative of our culture's elevation of animal life and all this veganism and vegetarianism, and save the whales and save the polar bears and save the pandas, but we're not even saving our baby humans. We're not even prioritizing human life, and we're aborting them up to the 60 plus million babies being slaughtered. And yet it just shows you. I don't think Taylor Swift thought that through, of course, when she was putting that in her video. I'm sure she did not think that deeply, but it does show and is indicative of where our culture at is, at the elevation of animal life, but we're devaluing human life, and we're putting our nose up at commitment and long-term building of a family together, but we'll take an animal and have it like our baby animal. I hate it when people call themselves like a cat mom or a dog mom. Like, I'll talk about that another time. You've already heard me talk about it on Instagram, okay? I cannot stand that. Continuing with the last couple of lyrics I'll read of her song. I'm the only one of me, let me keep you company. So keeping you company is the only thing she's looking for? Not, lifelong commitment. She just wants to keep him company. Guess what? Your pet can also keep you company. Your grandma can keep you company. Your coworkers can keep you company. If it's about keeping you company, you can go anywhere for that. But the whole point of relationships and marriage is more than a whole heck of a lot more than keeping someone company. And then she continues, this was funny. This is funny. Hey kids, spelling is fun. Girl, there ain't no I in team, but there is a me. But so team, there's no me. I guess if you go backwards, M, it's like TEAM. I don't understand. Like, you can just take out the M and you can take out the E and you can make a me with those letters, but it just doesn't. She's stretching herself a little far for this. Strike up the band 1, 2, 3. I promise you'll never find another one like me. Girl, there ain't no I in team, but you know there is a me, and you can't spell awesome without me. I promise that you will never find another like me. Oh yeah, I want your baby. We can tell this whole thing is based on lust, not on love or commitment or, sacrificial love. The things that actually grow a community and build families. So there you go. We're running way over on time, so I'm actually going to go ahead and skip questions and go right to good in the world. So essentially, this story is so beautiful, and I love it, love it. An Alabama teacher whose infant was diagnosed with cancer received over 100 sick days from coworkers who pooled their own together so he could spend time with his sick child. His wife put out a Facebook post and was just like, we're desperate. Our little baby daughter has leukemia, I think, but she has some sort of cancer, and they needed 40 sick days for something. Maybe she was having a surgery, and it just overwhelming came in, and they had over 100 sick days from coworkers. And I love this, and part of the reason why I love this is not only is this just generosity. I'm sure not all these people knew this guy. Maybe they knew of him, but they didn't know him personally. I'm sure it just counting on how many there are. And I just think it's beautiful, because this is what community is for when you are in a time of need or trouble. Community is there for you. And the government has tried to step in and be that person with all their government programs to try and do that. But the government, I'm sorry, but they don't do a good job. They mess it up inherently, because there's a removal. Because this gentleman getting 100 sick days, he knows that another person had to sacrifice their sick days to give to this man. And so there's an immediate and direct link of one person being generous to another person. When Uncle Sam steps in and is robbing one person forcibly, because you will go to jail eventually if you have income tax evasion, but Uncle Sam comes in and robs forcibly a group of people and then gives to another person. And that other person, there's no direct connection as to other people are being generous to me. They're sacrificing for me. It's no, Uncle Sam is generous, and it becomes this greedy, I demand, I want, gimme is what it comes down to. Because there's a broken link. So what I love is that this is what community is for. This is what, to me, charity is for. This is what Christianity is part of for too, is we're supposed to give to the needy. We're supposed to give to those who are under misfortune or going through a hard time. And I think that direct link of generosity is really important to maintain someone's dignity. They can have generosity in a time of need, but then they don't become reliant on it and start being fraudulent and stealing from coworkers when he doesn't actually need that time. So if he was just like, donate my time, I want to go on a trip to, Costa Rica and go fishing and ziplining or whatever, like that would be, no one would give to that, because that's not generosity. That's like, whatever. It's just like, I want it, give it to me. But when someone's truly in need and others come in and they fill that need with their generosity, that's good for both the receiver and the giver, because generosity is good for the soul. But what the government does is not generosity, that's theft. So that is your feel-good story. I know I got a little caught up in giving a lesson on government as well, but have a blessed rest of your week. God bless you. God bless America.